right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hazmat Guys Nation Roundtable. This is a multimedia platform to bring hazmat response information and training tips from hazmat members from around the globe. I am Bobby Salvesen, and I'll be acting as the host with the most. Once again, ruggedly handsome. No, I can't. You can't call yourself that, can you? I don't think you can.
Yeah,
all right. Bob is ruggedly handsome.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Mike. Wow, that's weird.
Anytime. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
We'll go around the horn real fast. We got Bob Kosh. I don't know where he is on your screen, but he's below mine. He's like in the Brady Bunch lower left. And where are you from, Mike? Bobby?
From Orlando, Florida. I'm a hazmat lieutenant, Orlando Fire Department, program manager for Valencia College, and training manager for HazSim, training simulation company.
Excellent. Mike, what about you?
I'm just a firefighter with New York City Fire Department, Hazmat Company 1. I got no other title. Just a.
You give you a title.
That's Phil Ambrose at the top.
Yeah, right now I'm at the top. I'm to your left. Phil Ambrose. I run Hazmat Nation. I also founded HazSim. I'm a fire captain in Southern California.
Excellent. I am also a member with Mike. I work with Mike at AFDNY. We're in Hazmat 1. And we're going to talk about a mishmash of stuff tonight. It seems that we really didn't have anything like truly like a topic. So we're going to kind of bounce around. I guess who wants to start it off?
Freestyle.
Yeah, it's totally
I love freestyle.
Yeah. Bob was going to breakdance.
in green screen?
I can't dance. I'm gonna tell yeah, there's no green screen. There's no max headroom tonight. It actually everything worked. It's good. So
he's got a new internet connection, got a haircut. He looks handsome. All right, good enough.
Well, we talked about Jay Rogers. Okay. We talked about 4 different things, and I could start if you want, Bobby.
No, hit it up.
Well, what I think is so cool, just starting off the bat, is we've been communicating about this all day. And then I think I spoke or emailed or text with, 6 different time zones today. And I really can't get over how cool that is, how hazmat's become that, like Jeff Z's in Washington State right now teaching. We all know that from following him on Facebook, but I can get a hold of him and ask him questions. So it's just really cool.
Yeah.
We had a hazmat call yesterday. It didn't make Hazmat Nation. But it was interesting because we've talked about this stuff before, but I'll go over it in brief. College chemistry lab came in as I think it initially started as an EMS run, which raises some red flags because they don't always come in as a hazmat, right? So the first engine company was heading towards, say, the health office for this particular campus. And I might be a little fuzzy on some of the details, but they had some people that were at least symptomatic, and they had word that there may have been some exposure to diethyl ether. So we were actually out, like I think several, maybe down the side screen, not Bobby and Mike, but we run a hazmat rig that's cross staff. So we're on an engine, which is a paramedic engine, and then we jump over to hazmat. We also do regional response and state response. So we could be anywhere and everywhere before we respond. So this was one of those perfect storms where we weren't right at the station next to the rig. Going in, we knew diethyl ether. We could talk a little more about it, but we thought, okay, if that's truly the case, right? Well, the 4 of us chatted. It's probably gone. We did arrive. We had a 2-story building that had been evacuated. I had multiple labs, and they had been about 80 people evacuated. There was, I think, the exact numbers. There was potentially 4 or 5, say, symptomatic, and a couple transported minor injuries due to this exposure. So really, it was system normal for the lab doing a procedure, and I need to go back there sometime and really. It's something I do kind of recall from college, but they're using diethyl ether with lots of glass beakers. Looked kind of like, your typical chemistry set, using ice to cool the procedure. And the ice would also knock down the fumes and or vapors, right? Did I get that right, Mike? My terminology?
Yes. So far, so good.
So situation normal, great. And I think they had great. It's very, very well run lab in general. You know, their storage, everything. But it kind of goes to show that some things just happen. They had in addition to the ice being used to cool the procedure and reduce the amount of, because anybody, if you pull out the old Hazcat kit and you do ether, you put it on your watch plate, it's going to disappear, evaporate in a matter of moments, right? Just so happened, coincidentally, there's a couple workers working in the attic space above all these labs on an unrelated job. And I never interviewed them, but they were, say, overcome or at least concerned, and rightfully so, of these of the fumes. And that's where they ended up, self-evacuating and going to the health office. So here we had a procedure that was supposed to go normal, and then we found two things. One was a line that was supposed to assist in removing the vapors from the workspace around the chemistry lab, had been presumed to be plumbed into a fume hood.
What do you mean, like a return?
Like a vapor line, rather than going into, say, like a scrubber, it was up through the ceiling, and as far as anybody knew, it was connected hardline into the ducting of the fume hood.
Gotcha.
So it should have just gone right up and out up and out.
In addition, and it's always good to see, it's nice to see a nice active chemistry lab. They were using all their procedures, but they had I believe they may have had an ice maker on the fritz, and they had multiple experiments going on. So kind of like my party on Sunday, I live near the port, so I can go spend $20 and get about a truckload of ice, because you don't want to run out when you're rolling with margaritas. So they ran low on ice, which then in turn raised the general temperature of the procedures they were doing and increased the volatility. I want to make sure I got all the words right. Therefore causing excess ether, say the vapors, fumes, smell, to rise. And it just so happened that there was some workers up above. Good news is, I think it was very minimal exposure overall. They self-evacuated as far as what happened to them. But it was very interesting because you have a very well-run lab, good professor and all that, all the controls, and still every now and then something can go a little more sideways. And they immediately addressed it. So as a Hazmat team, we got there. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
So it came over as dimethyl ether, or for sure it was the dimethyl ether?
Good question. It did come over that on dispatch. So of course, right away we're thinking, it's like, okay, it's probably gone, right? It's left. Elvis has left the building. And then when we got there, we interviewed further. And of course, like most chemistry labs, whether you're at a Ivy League university, community college, even some high school labs, they have a lot of a little. Not necessarily the largest quantities, but they did then mention that there may be hydrochloric acid in high concentrations, as well as some ammonia in and around the same area. Ended up that was not a player at all, but that changed. Go ahead.
So what ended up being the product? Was this the end product of a reaction? Did the reaction go askew because of the change in temperatures? Did it end up being the dimethyl ether? Were you able to pick anything up on meters?
Well, we're pretty sure that, say, if all the for one, if you have an open butt say exhaust going into an area where people aren't normally going, so that was one. Unless we reenacted the whole thing, I'm not sure if it was more that line that went into the attic space that wasn't properly plumbed, or they did say, even in the classroom and working with the stuff, because the lack of ice, that there was more volatilized ether that was, odoriferous in the room, if you will. But it sounded more like it could have been kind of a combination of both. And then they had immediately kind of shut down the operation, put caps on bottles. And as far as Hazmat, when we got there, that was all done. Everything was opened up. It's great because the first in captain happened to be another Hazmat captain. So they had set up for ventilation but didn't initiate it. And then we went through a choice of meters, which then, of course, the longer you talk to people, you find out about the hydrochloric, the ammonia. And I'm going to let you expand on that, what my guys chose to go in with and what level of PPE, if you want to guess. And they ended up clearing all the spaces involved so we could eventually turn the building back over to the occupants. But it made for, we did a regional response with one of our other teams that showed up. That was our backup. And we kind of all knew probably had left the building, but let's go through it and be able to make sure. And then, of course, when you have 80 people evacuated, you have that potential for additional, whether it be psychosomatic or people interested in going home. So I thought it was pretty, I thought it was pretty humdrum, yet kind of went through all the motions.
I got a couple of questions about that. When I'm hearing the word diethyl ether, I'm thinking flammable. Right? That's basically I'm without even looking up in a NIOSH, without looking up the ERG. I'm thinking like ether. I spray it in my carburetor to get my car to go. I'm shooting off the hip here. I don't even know if it's gonna be right, but I'm thinking it's gonna be something flammable. Right? So was that a concern, or was it just the nuisance of the odor?
That was absolutely a concern. Now the only way to know would have been to measure for the LEL. So our level of PPE was firefighter structural gear with BA,
right?
LEL, 4 gas, threw in there also something for ammonia, another meter for ammonia, and ours was out for service. We borrowed one of them because then for chlorine also, just so that we could cover all the known factors and from interviews, we found out there shouldn't be anything additional, but absolutely. I think for us, LEL was our initial biggest concern as far as any sort of potential.
And we went with the PPE to address the LEL, which is the turnout gear, the bunker gear.
Yeah. And your highest level of breathing, as far as if it wasn't the LEL, it would be, the ether's effect as far as what the dentist might use it for.
All right. Now, I did flip while you were doing this whole thing, the NIOSH guide. I wouldn't look at it because I wanted to kind of just hit from the hip, but now I'm looking at it. The LEL is real. The LEL UEL is very, very wide, actually, in my opinion. Very wide. It's 1.9 to 36. So it's an early hitter. We'll say it's an early hitter. And another thing is,
it lasts a while.
What?
And it lasts a while. You got a good big fat range.
Yeah, it's gonna be active for a while. And the other thing is it has an IP of 9.53. So for the majority of the country's PIDs, it's going to be picking up. So if I was in the rig going to this run, I'm thinking about the standard 4 gas. I'm thinking about the PID, maybe the FID if you have option to do that. Again, the FID is going to give you that organic.
That's right.
The FID versus the PID, one's going to give you the organic versus the non-organic. And those two are going to be able to tell you something. That's where we turn into a detective. I mean, everybody kind of get what I'm saying that? I don't.
Yeah, the PID is going to point you to where you're at because for lack of a better term, it's a point detector.
Right.
And then you've got your LELs looking to see the range that you're going to have.
Right. The PID is going to tell me about flammability, and the FID is going to tell me about organics.
Right.
And they're both going to tell me about flammability, but the combination of the two is going to make a really easy time of doing this whole thing. So that's kind of like my thought on this whole thing. You're going to have the odor. Obviously, we're going to be putting air into the building. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they're like, we'll just put the fans and we'll blow them out. We don't put we don't put anything through a fan that's throwing flames in its motor around.
Well, I would say the truck company that had the Hazmat captain, it was an electric blower, and they did not initiate it. And we ended up, I don't think we ever needed it because once we cleared it, then there was enough natural ventilation that just happened through the course of the evacuation. That was all good. But for me, one of the unknowns was we had a good layout. We could actually see into the open doors, but this attic space, until they actually got in there and looked at it, it ended up being almost a whole nother level with, a ladder staircase, if you will, and catwalk. So it was, but initially it's like, wait, how big is this attic space? And let's make sure we check. And the source, back to, I think somebody already brought it up, but the source had been dealt with prior to us arriving. So that made everything.
Now the source was it coming from one chemical reaction? Was it coming from multiple chemical reactions? Like, was it like a college lab, or was this like a research lab?
It was college lab, so multiple similar experiments set up, but they had kind of shut down all sources prior to we ever got there. And I'm not exactly sure, because this was business as usual, and and for all intents and purposes, the experiments that had the proper amount of ice probably actually did okay. And then I believe it was only one island area that had this unique venting system that was discovered. And how they would have known. I mean, I'm not the IH for the building, but they immediately addressed it. But I think it makes you wonder how if that even was an effective part of the ventilation, and if so, you never would have thought that would have happened.
Yeah, I mean, in our area, we actually get labs quite a lot. Really good labs, and things just happen.
That didn't sound like a lab that was barking, though. It sounded more shepherdish.
No, that was a coon hound attacking a dachshund before.
Good stuff.
Yeah, so humdrum, but you learn something on every one. And where we also just learned was, if anybody that deals with universities, it's always good to have a good relationship with them, because often they also fall under a whole different set of rules. Doesn't mean they have to play, but their regulators may be different. And this one is not particularly, but we have another one that we go to in another city where we're the hazmat team for that. They're inspected by a different agency. It's a whole different thing. So good exercise. Got out, used our equipment. Set up another thing to add was we did our pre-entry briefing, and somebody from one of the other teams had brought up, hey, what about decon? We're kind of had already tech refed it, thinking, but we ended up pulling up a rig and pulling a hose line because I think it had already been done on the other side. But it's that, at least for us, for me, I love to, if it's a static situation, nobody's dying, there's not an active leak, take that extra step, and everybody gets a say. And hey, what did we miss something? And that came up, and within 4 minutes we had an engine there and a hose line, a rookie firefighter holding the line, so we were good. So did we need it? Nah, but I'm glad we did it. So
Phil, let me ask you a quick question, because this came up in a training the other day, and Bobby and Mike, maybe you guys can chime in on this too. When you guys do an entry, do you do the pre-vitals?
Oh, medical monitoring.
There's a lot of departments that do this. They hook up they do blood pressure, pulse, EKG, the whole 9 yards. And my contention's always been, we don't do it going into a house fire. We don't do it on an extrication. All this is another version of that. We're just wearing a different type of PPE. So I know the country's kind of split on that. So I'm just curious what everybody else does.
It's because the standard requires it. The NFPA standard requires you to get medical monitoring before you enter the situation. So our department gets around that by saying, as long as you have had a company medical within the past year, we will use that blood pressure and pulse as your baseline. So your
physical.
Our physical, right. So when we come out from an entry suit, the paramedics will pull up our previous information, they'll take our blood pressure, and if there's a deviation, that's what they use.
Okay.
And actually, me and Mike, because of our company, we have to go for extended blood counts.
Yeah, we do too.
Monitoring, and we do it actually every 6 months, because we do what they call Education Day, where they give us updates, and then another one where it's medical. So we actually go twice a year, and that's
lucky you.
Oh, it's awesome. It's fantastic.
What about you, Phil? You guys do the BP and vitals and everything beforehand?
And from California, I should almost start. This is for entertainment purposes only, and the lawyers have advised. Use your local protocol. It all may be different. I did think about that. Being from California, we might want to throw in some. But we do have all the medical monitoring equipment and similar, because as a company commander, there was no different their entry was no different than if we had gotten a house fire with victims
Right.
trapped and they're going in. But we do have it all. And where I get really concerned, we go on an extended response, level A, in the heat, and have the personnel. This was not, and I guess, and Mike, if NFPA specifically addresses it, like for us too, we do extensive physicals every year, and then the metal screening where you got to poop on the target, right?
Yeah, I don't know if anything ever happened. I don't know if what our department does would ever stand up in court, but that's what they do.
Yeah, so we
I was
we
just
did that.
curious. I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah,
So.
well, the IC really hooked us up too. We ended up we had medical as far as for the victims, and then we had medical assigned to us as well. And it was a very brief initial, no repeat entry. So if that makes it past the legal muster, but I think at least on a call, I would run it would just like you'd look at rehab if you had an extended, defensive fire operation. You got guys running in and out. But I know we meet the minimum. Hammer you if anyone get injured. Oh, and Jason knows the OSHA really well. So in that case, yeah. And where OSHA was involved in this was since it was a school and a workplace, we had to notify them. But so we did our due diligence for initial med monitoring, but it's definitely something we are concerned about on multiple entries and active leak. This was more of a you could almost say, was this an entry or was this like in Phoenix, how they would call it recon?
I guess it would be a recon. I mean, nobody really mitigated anything. And the initial team was kind of going in bunker gear with meters, just kind of get a picture of what was going on. But I'm not a lawyer, so to divvy up that, that kind of fine line.
Let them figure it out.
Yeah, that's.
They make enough money. They can figure it out.
When people get hurt, everything becomes very technical.
Yeah, that is true.
Does anyone do their physicals every other year? No, I'm actually pretty sure that the OSHA standards are very clear that it's supposed to be a yearly.
Yeah,
annual.
Ours is every year extra. I think it's, and I just had mine a month ago. I think it was extra 5 vials of blood for all the heavy metals and all that stuff. And then they keep the records for 30 years, supposedly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's definitely supposed to be every year. If you're not getting a medical monitor every year, you should definitely talk to your union.
For sure.
If you're lucky enough to have one, that's definitely a union issue.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
F the unions.
Yeah.
A whole nother blab. I got a great medical monitoring story, but not for this one.
Oh, I got a whole bunch of class for that one. Thank you.
Maybe we got a lot more people because Super Tuesday was maybe boring.
Everybody was bored to death.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're just going to kill them.
Yeah.
Bob, so you had what? You had one you were kicking around today with a fumigation?
Yeah, Phil and I were talking about this, and I think he's got a story about one. But as a brand new lieutenant, 14 years ago, I guess it's been now.
I wasn't born yet.
We went to a dance club downtown Orlando, and we've been there multiple times for the fog machine, automatic fire alarm. And you pull up to the door, it's 4:00 in the morning. They only closed a couple hours ago. You look through the windows, you see this white haze. Average person. Now I'm responding as the hazmat, as the first due engine company for that area, but I'm also the hazmat engine and the hazmat lieutenant. We go there all the time. We've been there multiple times. What happened? We got complacent. And this happened to me, so I'm sharing it for everybody. We looked in the windows and you could see the white fog, the haze going across. And hey, I told my chief it's probably just the fog machine got left running. Opened the door, and as soon as we walked in, my lips started tingling. My tongue started tingling. And I thought, okay, I just stepped into and brought everybody else with me a potentially deadly situation. And what they had done was they had set like 50 bug bombs. This wasn't an actual fumigation where the tent is over the house, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But this was 50 or so bug bombs that were set off in this dance club. And once I realized it was only me and my firemen, thank God, just the two of us, instead of the 20 other guys that were behind me getting ready to come in, we held up, backed up, ventilated it, and saw that, okay, that's what set the mechanical alarm off. It looks like smoke to an extent, that white kind of cloud, not really gray and everything we would suspect from hydrocarbons, but it was enough to think that, hey, you got something burning inside. Let's force the door and go in. And it was something that made that, and when I teach to this day, slow up a little bit. That white smoke or that light gray smoke may not be smoke at all. It might be something different. And in this instance, it was a pesticide. And luckily, we realized it only 10 or 15 feet in the door.
I had one like that, but it was steam. And I was a probie, and I pulled the line without being told to. Because it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and all I saw was all 4 windows, what I thought was smoke pushing out like there was no tomorrow, and it turned out to be a major steam leak in the apartment. And I had the nozzle. I grabbed my line. I went running to the door. And, yeah,
nice.
Boss wasn't happy with me.
But you know what happened from that incident, and because of the area that we covered, we also have a residential area around there where there was a lot of old wood, what they call Florida cracker houses, wood frame, 900 to 1,000 square foot, not real big. And there was a lot of fumigation going on over the last, 15, 20 years. And the question came up, how do we fight these fires? Or do we fight these fires? And what about if somebody's inside? Because unfortunately, we like to say we're in a crime-free environment. We know that's not true. But we got squatters living inside or trying to get inside. And we've got people, quite frankly, trying to burglarize these people while the tent's on it. So do we go in and search for these people? If a neighbor called and said, hey, I saw somebody run inside this house that's been tented, or you pull up at 3 o'clock in the morning and it's on fire, do we fight the fire? Are we supposed to wear SCBA? Do we even go in? There's a whole bunch of different scenarios that, something to kind of talk about. Do we do something or don't we do something?
Yeah.
It's funny. I thought the tenting thing was just in the movies and cartoons. I didn't realize that they actually tented houses until just now.
It's not a mark. Well,
no.
The first
they
time
do a lot here in Florida, believe me.
I was like, I when I saw that in Breaking Bad, they were using that as their meth lab. I'm like,
that was so awesome.
How is that? And I'm like, I said it. I'm like, holy shit, they really.
That's my camper I got on the East Coast, but we won't talk about that right now.
and what's interesting on that is we had the Viking rep come out, which I had a couple shockers. One is sulfuryl fluoride, which was originally Dow. Out if Jeremy's on there, is now a Vicane out of Pittsburgh, California, which California does not produce a whole lot of hazmat. But it's regionally, it's Hawaii, California, Florida, the southern states, but where their new market is with the bed bugs. So you won't see the tents. It'll be more of like a sealed off, just control the ventilation, but now they're using it and in higher doses for the bed bugs. So now NYC, Chicago, all those places that never saw the circus tent come into town because their termites weren't like ours, if you even had any, are now we'll see at least an uptick in the use with the bed bugs.
But now if you're in New York City, you'll see a sign that says, if you notice bed bugs, call 1-800 whatever, because I saw that when I was there in December.
Yes. Yeah, but we, me and Mike, we've had a bunch of these pesticides cans or whatever it might be, and they're fumigating in an apartment, but they don't really notify anybody around them. They just do it.
You're talking more like a bug bomb.
Yeah, bug bomb. Because I'll be honest, I've never seen a tented house.
Really, you guys don't have that up there at all?
Never. I thought it was part of cartoons and movies until you just said you had them. No. I'm like, that's ridiculous.
You don't have the coyote with the big anvil either?
No. The rockets on the roller skates, never seen.
Well, we don't have the cliffs, so.
Yeah. Well, we got the subterranean termites, and then we got the regular wood termites, and they swarm 2 or 3 times a year. So there's a lot of wood frame houses in Florida, especially in Central Florida, where they have to. I mean, any given street, you'll find a house that's got a tent on it. And they've got the warning signs, that say danger, do not enter, and we've actually talked to the people, and the different chemicals that they use, again, it was happening so frequently. They asked me, what are we going to do? Hell, I don't know. Maybe we should talk to somebody. And that's what we did. And we realized that, hey, listen, we were starting to run on people after they took the tent off that were dead inside because they were burglars trying to rob the joint.
I don't see anything wrong with that.
I don't. I mean, that's just, saves us some money in prisons, it's whatever.
I would actually fumigate my house just for that purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome.
But, but the question is posed, what do you do if the neighbor sees somebody go in there?
Well, and
you're going to call 911 and send the first due engine company to go in and look, or what?
Well, let's first delineate, because I think the bug bomb, your, I don't know, maybe it would be your unmarked pickup truck fly-by-night operation. That's scary. That's unregulated, not to sound like the rep, but man, he had me, because they've had when it comes to the legitimate tenters, those guys are actually, guys and gals, are very, it's highly regulated. They have very few accidents, at least in the United States. I think Virgin Islands had one where something happened bad, where they tented a house with a child inside or something crazy. But, so first to delineate, the legitimate companies, it's like becoming a hazmat technician, as far as at least becoming a journeyman and working your way up. So they do that. So they're using sulfuryl fluoride mostly. And what's gnarly about that, for company school, the sulfuryl fluoride is odorless, colorless. It's not flammable, but they use a chloropecrin when they set it up. That's like a pepper spray type, to give it that irritating, so that nobody goes in the circus tent. So that's actually what the irritant is. The straight up sulfuryl fluoride, at least in California, and I believe Florida too, we have a couple different air regulations, but those containers, yeah, exactly. Those containers exist on the truck. They adjust the poundage accordingly. That structure gets dosed up, and of course they want to do a good job too. So they actually, some of them now use specific monitors inside, so they're seeing the effectiveness. And then there's no product that remains on scene in a cylinder. And then there's also the chloropecrin that's set up. Then that's the stuff that'll make you run out tearing if it's all done right. So they do a pretty darn good job. But here in the LA area, we've had an uptick in burglaries associated with tented homes. And it actually, I know New York does, we do. There's hazmat cops. So they're gun-toting hazmaters. LAPD has a unit. And even though they're gun-toting hazmat guys, they still, to them, a criminal inside that structure, that's still a SWAT call out to them. So there was our city had a couple calls, or one of our shifts went on two very recently. And it's that standoff where if somebody's in there, do you need to go in and get them? And is it a law enforcement thing or a fire thing or a hazmat thing? And
let me ask this: sulfuryl fluoride. What is its characteristics? It's IDLH. It's time weighted average. What are we looking at for toxicity? Because that's where our chemical physical properties start to play a part. Where you say, okay, well, this guy went in. He's been in for an hour. Is he viable? Yeah, if he's viable, you freaking throw on SCBA and you go and get him. If he's not viable, then screw it, leave him.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the MSDS right in front of me, but I'm sure Bobby will look it up. But then viable base sulfuryl fluoride, or the trade name Vicane, that's the most popular one.
Okay.
And then,
it's heavier than air, and its scale is like 10 parts per million. From what I looked up,
it's pretty nasty. And to your point, Mike, so when they do this, when they pump it up and then they close up, there's an upper vent and a lower vent where they put it in. They have fans that are circulating inside to make it work, to get it to penetrate, to find all the bad termites and cockroaches. They put a label, then they shut off the gas, they double lock all the doors, and then there's a label that says how many pounds and at what time, because they have, based on environmental conditions, you should be able to predict in 12 hours the half-life, yada yada. So it all depends on how long that's been there. But of course, the issue that came up on the calls that were happening here is, well, is this an armed suspect that we're going in to rescue? Because that's a different story. And in one case in particular, there was no suspect in there. It was just a broken window, but the helicopter was getting a heat signature, which was ultimately the fan used to circulate inside. So that was just another thing to think about. Well, in that case, looking back in retrospect, they could have DC'd the fan if they wanted to, and that might have helped rule out what the helicopter's FLIR was seeing.
All right. I just quickly looked this up. The self-fuel.
Yeah, this is crazy stuff.
Let's see. The time weighted average 5 parts per million. Colorless, odorless gas. Has no LEL, UEL. IP is 13.04, so a PID is not going to grab it. Actually, the FID probably won't grab. Actually, will the FID? No, there's no carbon.
Flammable. Yeah, no carbon.
It's SO2 F2. So that's how. And listen, guys, for those of you that don't know, the reason why I just said what I said was because the IP is 13.04, so it's above that normal. What is it? 10.6, right?
10.6. Yeah.
10.6 is the normal PID. Okay, so that's going to tell me about flammables. It's above that. It's not going to tell me nothing. And then I said, is the FID going to see it? And what I did was I quickly went up to the formula, and I went to look if there's any C and H's. And there's none. It's SOF. So the FID is not going to pick up either. The FID can read up to like 15.7. But there's got to be carbons and hydrogens in there.
Right.
It's got to be good California organic.
And now what? Yeah. Let me ask.
That's
a
a whole other subject.
Let me ask another question on this. This Vicane.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any kind of phosphate family function in it. So do we treat as an orgo? Do we?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I'm not a paramedic, but just from my basic EMT skills, would be high flow O2, IV, and treat symptoms as you go.
Diesel therapy.
Because the inhalation has actually, I've never heard of it before, but in the SDS sheet, if you look this up and you look up SDS, it has like an inhaler with a medicine that you're supposed to take every 10 minutes, but I'd never heard of the medicine. So
what do they say it is, Mike?
What's the medicine?
Let's see. What does it say? First aid. I just saw it. I'll have to get back to you on it.
Oh,
well, here's one of the things, and this has been a discussion here, and I'm sure it probably has been in California as well. So what do you do? What do you do? Let's say you've got the guy that the neighbor sees him go inside. What do you do as the first due engine company arriving on scene? One, two, three, go.
So I'm gonna treat this like I pretty much would anything else, and I'm gonna say I have bunker gear and SCBA and my thermal imaging camera. I know this isn't fire, so it's not like I'm crawling around and not able to see. I can do a really quick search in a house with full bunker gear, no smoke, no fire, and a thermal imaging camera just to get in and out. I could probably go through an average size house in what, Bob? You'd say less than 2-3 minutes you could be in and out to do an initial recon? This stuff is not overly skin absorbable.
Right.
So our primary concern is respiratory. So let's protect our respiratory system. Let's continue with our bunker gear because that's what the first responder is going to have. And let's go in, do our search. If we find somebody, maybe if you really want to limit your exposure, come out, let another team know where the guy is, and let them go get him.
And me as a company officer would have no problem with that whatsoever.
Unless he's considered armed.
That's what I'm thinking. Is
yeah.
Do we wait until we hit the thud of him hitting the ground? And
by the time we've got there, 5, 6, 7, 10 minutes later,
yeah,
everything, he's probably already hit the thud.
If you look at this thing,
that is a good point.
If they're administering this thing, I mean, obviously they're giving it a concentration that's going to be enough to kill whatever parasite might be inside. The ideal H of this is 200 parts per million. That's relatively low. So, I don't know. You're hitting me from this is real deal. I mean, like, if I'm on the rig and I'm responding into this, I don't know much more than what I'm reading from the NIOSH, from, let's say, maybe the Chris manual, whatever the hell I'm looking into. What am I going to do there? How many breaths does this thing take to knock down a human?
Now,
it looks like a lot. So, under indications of immediate medical attention in the SDS for this, it says it is predicted that a person exposed to whatever this chemical is shows little evidence of intoxication at first, unless the concentration is very high, greater than 400 parts per million, and early symptoms are respiratory irritation and central nervous system depression, with excitation to follow.
So if you have CNS depression, you might have respiratory depression. You're probably going to have sluggishness. You probably want to go to sleep.
What kind of parts per million are in this house when they first shoot it up? And,
good question.
And how quickly does it?
And this was freestyle night, so I'm going off of memory from the interview. And it's good proof that everybody down the column is this requires a good tech ref checking it out, because we're just naming one of the most popular, the most common. This one's made in California. There's a Chinese ripoff, I understand, that is cheaper. Doesn't necessarily mean it's better. It's got more impurities. And then there's somebody could help me out here. Is it methyl bromide? I want to say that. Where you'll also see any of this fumigation stuff is at your ports of entry. And for, furniture coming from Indonesia or whatever it is, they do use various fumigants. And you don't hear of a ton of problems with them because, like I said, this not to say there couldn't be accidents, but I was fascinated by the Viking rep that we spoke with, had been an applicator for years and had lots of street experience. And there's just not been a whole lot of, because they shut off the gas, they keep the electric on, they double lock everything. So as far as Jimmy on his tricycle, oh no, it looks like he went under the circus tent. That it would have to be criminal intent or somebody trying to harm somebody to actually. And then if they pass that threshold, the applicators have a BA. So next time anybody sees one of these trucks, there'll be SCBA inside. They, at least in California, it's set up to avoid using the SCBA. So they actually set up the the irritant is I believe it's a powder they add water to, and they set those up in various places. And then they start pumping in the gas. But this whole operation is, meant to be done with using no more than a face shield for PPE, because the way they do it, they're pumping it in, circulating it. But it's measured in pounds, and I was told about 12 pounds will do your typical 2,000 square foot single family home. But the calculations obviously are all based on size of the home, and and then of course, when they do set when they set up the tents, of course, they're at least pressurizing that a little bit to see how good a job they did. Part of it is the environment, but more importantly, it's because if the tent's got leaks, it's going to be ineffective, because this stuff, when it gets out, it's leaving the scene, it's gone.
Well, that I'm just looking it up. I'm saying to myself, how are we going to read this stuff? There is no meter. You may get lucky with a cross sensitivity, but so I quickly looked up, Draeger makes a CMS and CDS kit, which is the tubes and the chips, depending. And sure as shit, they have a sulfuryl fluoride chip for the CMS, which is the electronic one, the digital one, that goes from 1 to 5 parts per million. And it measures in 3 minutes. Now, 5 parts per million, if I'm reading this right, the measurement range is 1 to 5 parts per million, and it takes 3 minutes. So if that's true, and this stuff goes, the TWA is 5 parts per million, you're basically reading up to the maximum of the TWA. The IDLH is 200, and so Mike, you just said 400, where the CNS stuff starts popping out.
Yeah, it says if you inhale, I guess that's almost like a ceiling, where if you inhale more than 400 parts per million, unless the concentration is very high, and they consider very high to be 400 parts per million. So does that mean that normally we're not getting anywhere near 400 parts per million?
I found out two things on the metering, at least the gentleman I spoke with, is they do carry a handheld meter that I wasn't able to find it. I think it's specific to the industry for sulfurofluoride. And then they started using remote monitoring systems, but I think it was more, say, good business practice, because why waste product? They would set those up to see what concentrations they're getting. Say if they had a large structure with multiple elevation changes, I can imagine, solely because once it hits that target concentration that they know, the entomologists, right, the bug people know, then they can stop, and then they save on product, and they make sure they have a happy customer. Because actually, one of the side notes, this gentleman worked in Hawaii, and most of the companies, there's gnarly beetles in Hawaii. I mean, there's I forget what the name of one is. They say the bite is like a mild gunshot wound, if you've ever heard that phrase. But some of these actual fumigation companies in Hawaii ensure that it was done well, meaning if the termites come back and there's any damage, that fumigation company's on the hook now. So that remote monitoring, I think, is more so that they know they got it good. But so you could get on scene and you'll see a label that says, hey, first of all, there's a number, call them right away, get them on scene. There's something that says this was applied yesterday, 24 hours ago at this concentration. So you could start doing your tech ref and go, hey, what do we got left? You can ventilate it off the top. There's a means to do that. And then you could also check and see, they might have a remote monitoring system in there that you can already check and see where the PPMs are. Those are all possibilities, but check your local listings.
Your mileage might vary.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. This stuff doesn't seem overly crazy. I don't think somebody's going to go in and then immediately flop out. I think he would have plenty of time to grab a couple things and make his way out.
They go to, at least here, they've gone to Ace Hardware Store, Home Depot, any of your stores like that, grab a little painter's mask, and the burglars go in to try and do what they can before the toxicity hits them and knocks them out. And one of the things that in another area of Florida, the guy's eyes were burning so bad. You're talking about like the gas that gets shoot in there. He couldn't stand it. He got in 5 feet and was running outside crying, from like tear gas symptoms. But we have found a couple people dead when they've taken the tent off, and they go through before the residents come home, and there's a guy laying there dead on the floor. So, is he a squatter? Is he trying to, whatever? But it brings a point to, now we talked about the person sneaking in there. What about the places on fire? Because they forgot to turn off the hot water heater. They forgot to secure the electrical hazards, anything, the ignition sources. Because when this stuff catches on fire, it doesn't have a flammable range, but it does produce corrosive atmospheres when it does catch on fire. So now what do we do as a first engine company or even a hazmat team? You respond to that house fire and it's got a tent on it. Are we going to go in and do a search? Because now you're looking at, I've got this big plastic bag, for lack of a better term, over this house. Now it's burning. What are we going to do? Send people in? Or are we going to stand back and, go defensive?
Wow.
My gut instinct is to make a push.
But
I don't.
Ow!
You go in through the front door, whip out a knife. Because if you think about it, right, most of the houses that are built today, maybe not these little shanties that you're talking about, but at least the newer houses that we have here on the island, they are really, really airtight. So
Right.
They are almost like enclosed houses to begin with. Some of these things are so airtight. So really, what are we looking at? Well, if we're talking about being afraid of the chemical that's in there, and wearing our SCBA is going to take care of that, then the only thing then that we're worried about is ventilation for smoke, which, we can get in there, we can do our job without ventilation. It sucks, but I don't think I think if we pulled up on a warehouse that had no windows and a sealed roof, I don't think we would not go in because we couldn't ventilate right away.
Right?
Yeah. The only dynamic separating this scene from a regular house fire is the gas. Okay,
Which is going to be consumed during the fire.
It's going to be consumed almost instantly. I mean, it has no.
But it's going to convert to now a corrosive.
Yeah, but even so, I mean, like the solubility is 0.2%. So it's not like it's going to run off. It's going to basically hang out in the air. It's not going to be absorbed in the water or something like that. So,
Will this one have an HF factor if exposed to fire because it has the fluoride in it?
It doesn't say any reactivities or incompatibilities in the NIOSH, but that doesn't mean it's conclusive.
It did say when it was in a decomposition factor that it did conform to acid, and there was an HF factor mentioned in one thing that I read, but it was very minimal. Their bigger thing
right here.
Go ahead.
The last line of page 6 of 12 on the SDS: hazard materials decompose hydrogen fluoride and sulfur oxides.
Right. Good catch.
But I think the sulfur oxide was more than the HF, if I remember right.
Right, but Monday morning quarterbacking this thing. We're never going to know that on the way in.
No, you're not.
Well,
that's true.
Let's go back to the initial, which we're all imagining that different fire, right? It's the big circus tent. It's either just coming out every orifice, but what it changes for me actually is way before the hazmat side. It's like a building under construction. Is we risk a lot to gain a lot. If you're rolling up on scene on something that there's no cars in the driveway and children's play stuff out front, if this is a house I'm going to identify that in my size up. It appears to be a house being fumigated. Right there, it kind of starts as, is there anybody even in there? I'm not opposed to going in and putting it out, because I'd almost want to argue that the MSDS we have in front of us might be safer than the burning formaldehydes and toxins and carcinogens that we get anyhow that we don't have an MSDS for, right? It's that tag the FBI doesn't want you to take off the mattress.
Really good point.
But it would be my concern, at least as a company commander, is this thing even, not to say, oh, okay, well, there could be that homeless person or somebody that goes in there and we're going to do our due diligence, do a search, but it's definitely going to play a factor if you have. Now, how many of us, everybody in probably the chat room, have been told, oh, no, nobody's home on any call, an EMS call, then, oh, yeah, there's a guy sleeping in the back. So you got to take that into account. But I think I'd be more concerned with the fact that if all things were normal and it was being fumigated, I really wouldn't expect anybody to be in there. But Phoenix the other day didn't expect a guy out on the front lawn with a gun either, when they rolled up to that structure fire. So expect the unexpected.
All right. Well, that was quite lively. But we're up on time. We have to cut this short.
Oh, that went quick.
It did. That's
wow.
Nice.
So, that wraps up another episode of the Hazmat Guys Nation Roundtable. Please be sure to follow us on Facebook, which we actually have a nice little new Facebook page. At the Hazmat Nation, the Hazmat Guys, and you can also find us the Hazmat Nation Guys, right? That's a new one.
The Hazmat Guys Nation Facebook page.
So let's go around the table. Phil, where can we find you?
You can find me on Hazmat Nation, and if there's something about this, of course, there's all sorts of different ways to get a hold of us and call us out. But if you've got something you're real passionate about and you want to post something, get an article up on Hazmat Nation, send it, and we'll put it up. I also, I'll do a quick shout out for HazSim. I normally don't, but today I'm wearing a Raleigh-Durham Hazmat 13 shirt, which you can't see the back, but it's a cool 13. But I'm really stoked. I got it in the mail today. Raleigh-Durham's now a customer, and it's just been fun. I was talking to Bob about it. I said, anybody that's watching this that knows we're involved with HazSim, hey, if you got a system and you're using it, let us know. If you're having trouble, let us know. Any problems, we back everything. We're both first responders. We both sit in the seat. We invented that thing to get people better trained, and kind of stoked now collecting shirts and patches from across the U.S. It's cool. But I'm giving that self-promotion plug, but just so, hey, it's on record here. You're interested, let us know. But if you got one and it's sitting on a shelf, I want it to be used. The last thing we did was make the HazSim so it could sit in a Connex box collecting dust. It's out there to try to help train first responders.
Cool. Bob, what about you?
Yeah, you can find me at hzmtlt@gmail.com or Twitter. Also hazmatnation.com. And hopefully everybody will join next week for another new and exciting episode.
I hope so too. Mike, go.
All right, so you're supposed to be able to get me at mike@thehazmatguys.com, but you can absolutely get both me and Bob at the hazmatguys1@gmail, right?
No, Hazmat Guys 1 Twitter. We're I don't know.
The Hazmat Guys
Sure.
at Gmail. Yeah. It's stuff's going on with our email.
Oh.
You can get me on Facebook under Michael Monaco. It's craziness. Email us. We get the emails, but we just for some reason can't respond. I don't know what's going on.
Or you can get all four of us at the Hazmat Guys Nation Facebook page. You can get all four of us.
And you got anything else, Mike?
No, I got nothing. I bring nothing to the table.
The only one that has a brain here.
I just want to throw out there that all four of us are going to be in FDIC. We don't know where the hell we're going to be, but we're going to be there somewhere doing something fun every night.
Probably going to be in a bar at least one night.
Oh my God. Night.
More than
up
one
in
night.
a bar. So you see the way I've been drinking this guy. Wow. So
I'm glad I'm not your liver.
Oh my God, I don't even think. I think he's on vacation. So please be sure to catch the next week's show, and this is live every Tuesday at 21:15 hours Eastern Standard on blab.im, which you're watching us, and they'll also be producing a podcast version of this that you can find under iTunes under the Hazmat Guys Nation, and we'll also be posting this under the video version of this on the YouTube. Which we have a Gmail account, the Hazmat Guys Nation, which is thmgnation@gmail.com. If you would like, please stick around afterwards when we shut this show off and we have an open table. And we like to hear from you guys. So that's it. Go in peace. Do something.
Be safe.
Something constructive.
Do we have to clap?
No, I'm not clapping for nobody.
No, the organizer.